Brad, they have a roster with a lot of guys who are out that are normally playing. So how does that change what you watch on tape?
No, again, the scheme is their scheme. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to prepare, and whoever we line up against, we've got to do our job. We've got to worry about us. And they've got plenty of really talented players that we've got to worry about.
Obviously, Vanderbilt's offense is so unique that there might not be a lot of week-to-week carryover, but what did you learn from the film session from last week that you all had to get fixed?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of guys that took some lumps, took some scars, right, that they can learn from. And again, that's part of the process. And some of them are young, some of them are old. Like wherever you are in your development stage, you're gonna have some days and some plays that don't go your way. And so obviously we're not pleased by it, happy with it. But it is what it is, and now it's our job as coaches to help them grow from that. It's their job as players to learn from it and to grow from it. So that's the hope this week, that the mistakes that they made, they don't repeat. The mistakes that I made, I don't repeat, and hopefully that shows on Saturday.
Coach, back to the injuries. Obviously, you guys are a little bit thin now on the back end, but also at linebacker. Does it make you feel a little bit easier knowing that they might be out without a top receiver, a couple running backs, maybe a quarterback?
Very few things help me sleep at night. So no, we're gonna play. We got to worry about us. We've got to play our brand of football, and obviously last week we didn't do that. We didn't live up to our standard, and that's what we're focused on. They've got plenty of talented players. And whoever it happens to be that we're lining up against, we know it's going to be a challenge. So no, it doesn't help me sleep any easier or be more confident. Confidence comes in execution. And that's worrying about yourself, not about anybody else you're playing.
Brett, we always talk about third down a lot, but last week it seemed like first down was the catch for you guys. Were you able to find a common factor?
Yeah, which stung a little bit just from the fact that we had been up to that point pretty darn good on first down. That's something that I've been proud of the guys all year. Had been a solid, P and 10, first and 10 team. Early in the season, some of the second long stuff got us. We had sort of gotten that cleaned up and got ourselves to third down. We have to be better on early downs. Like you can't get off the field, right, if you don't even give yourself a chance on third. So no, we looked at it and understand where their mistakes were, try to make those corrections. On the first third down of the game, play 3, if we had a mental error, and if we don't have that, we're off on the very first third down, and the whole sequencing, who knows where it goes from there. So listen, it's about executing throughout a game, but especially early, right? So much is about momentum, so much is about creating opportunities for the offense, and giving them opportunities where they have good field position. And so we've got to do a good job. Turnovers, if we get to third down, then we've got to do a nice job of trying to get off. We can't extend drives. So yeah, hopefully we get that thing fixed and get back to how we've been playing.
Vanderbilt was able to find big plays, and that obviously made the difference. But one thing it felt like the defense did do well was on the D-line, kind of get into Pavia, making him uncomfortable. Is that something that you can kind of continually lean more into going into this game, because that's maybe the one part of the defense that is the healthiest at this point in the season?
Yeah, there's give and take to everything, right? Like everybody loves pressure, coaches, players, fans, everybody loves pressure. Everybody loves, bringing it. The one thing you've got to be mindful is, again, when you talk about those big plays, right, the more people you bring to the party up front, to try to create pressure, the more, you're hanging them out a little bit on the back end. And so it's a give and take, you know, and we've got to be mindful of when we use it. Again, the guys up front have been playing good football, and again, you talk about their ability to affect the game. They have this year, and we're going to need them to again. Again, I think our back end, again, nobody's happy with the way we played on Saturday, but they've had a lot of really good performances too. So like, people need not forget that. And I know this group, and I know they're going to bounce back, and they're going to respond, and they're going to compete their tails off. And they're going to be mistakes. Yep, every game there's mistakes. But they're going to, hopefully it's not the same ones that we made last week. They're just ones, again, that we can get corrected on the sideline. We keep the ball in front of us. We've got to be a great tackling team. Obviously, what they can do in the run game from their zone scheme is explosive. Obviously, it doesn't take long. Turn on the tape last year, and they ran. We can talk about Vanderbilt all we want from last week, and those but the thing you got to remember is they ran for a lot of yards last year, and there's an embarrassment factor about that, you know, from myself, the coaches, the players that were here, and so we've got to do a good job in both phases, not just the passing attack, but they can really run the ball. I think the offensive line works really well together. They do a nice job within the scheme, so we've got to be able to handle that.
Obviously, there was two quarterbacks that could play this week with Miller Moss and Deuce Adams. What have you seen on tape of those guys about what you could see them do on Saturday?
Yeah, both of them can spin the football. You know, obviously a little bit more, you know, Q run there with Deuce. You know, last week you saw that sort of get amped up a little bit, and so, you know, you've got to be mindful of that. But obviously, Moss's experience in as many snaps as he's played throughout his career, he understands, you know, what he's looking at and where he wants to get the ball. So, yeah, both quarterbacks present a challenge.
Ty Bryant leads the SEC in interceptions now by himself. Just what kind of jump has he made this year?
Yeah, you know, Ty's always been a guy since the day he stepped on campus, you know, and it's just rock solid. You know, you can count on him every single day. He's out at practice every day, competes his tail off, you know, locked in, wants to know everything. He did, even out at practice today, and it's not the first time. It's multiple times he's done this. But like, I'm making a correction to the twos, a correction that he probably doesn't even need. He already knows the answer, and he comes off the sideline and he was like, "Hey, coach, so would you tell them?" Like, he doesn't want me to make a correction that maybe he actually didn't know without knowing. And you talk about modeling for young guys. Like, that's what a mental rep is, that you're watching the field. You're not even out there, hey, something went wrong, coach is making a talking point. He may already know what it is, but he wants to get it confirmed. And then if it's not what he thought it was, hey, coach, what was that point? Okay. And then he locks it in so he won't make that same mistake. And that's what we call pros. Like, that's being a pro. And Ty's been a pro since the day he stepped on campus.
Coach, to piggyback off that, obviously he was a two-year starter now, but with J Love going down, the senior to the junior, have you seen Ty kind of maybe put some of these other guys, Cam and some of these other guys, kind of under their wing these last couple of weeks and kind of step up?
Yeah, but I think he's been doing that all year. So I don't know if it's anything more significant than what he has been doing. Again, I think that's a really tight room. You know, when you talk about, you know, J Love and Ty B and Dooley, like those three, you know, they're like the three amigos, and then, you know, bringing the young safeties along with them, and so they all help each other, and again, the way Ty plays just elevates our defense.
Last one. Brian, I know some people might say there's really no way you can spin, you know, how many passing yards y'all gave up last week, but did it look better on film after you actually went back and saw it, that there were just a few of those plays where Pavia just made a perfect pass and the receivers came up with some good catches, or did it kind of look as bad in review as you could look maybe live?
That's an interesting question. No, they all the yards still were there. But it's interesting. We talk, you know, it's a good question. And here, and not to make light, but it's, we talk about alignment, we talk about technique, eyes, depth, everything. And it's funny when you talk about Florida and you talk about this game. And in the 2-minute against Florida, we run essentially the same coverage that we ran against Vanderbilt. And, you know, Q will tell you, like, he had the depth that he needed in the Florida game. In this game, he tried to disguise a little bit too long, and he ends up a yard short. And again, we talk about growing moments. We talk about learning. Like, sometimes you push the envelope to see how far you can go until you can't anymore. And then you get burnt and you're like, okay, you know what? This is what coach means when I can't disguise myself into a bad play. But you don't know how far you can push that until you get burnt. Now, hopefully, you know, you don't get it in a game. It happens in practice and you're going against, you know, the offense or whatnot. But sometimes when you go against the card team, right, in practice, you can push things way farther than you can in an actual game. And he just pushed it a little bit too far. But it's mind-boggling, and from a teach rep, that, like, it's almost the exact same route. It's the exact same coverage. One's a pick that he returns and changes at the end of the first half of Florida. One's a touchdown. And that's what this league is. The difference between a yard alignment can make that big of a difference.
Okay, folks, thank you very much.